So let's get started with the test estimation. So testing is often a sub-project within the large project. Testing is kind of complete project in itself. So you have a large project strategy which has all the strategy of the complete project development, testing and support and everything. So testing is a sub project within that large project. You should start with work breakdown structure that identifies stages, activities and tasks. So in order to do test estimation, because testing is a sub project and test estimation, you need to estimate how long it will take or what are the efforts required to achieve the testing cycle, to achieve all the test tasks. So you should start with work breakdown structure that identifies stages, activities and tasks. So you should break down the stages that are involved in the testing, what are the activities within those stages and what are the tasks in those stages. So first, break down the testing project into phases using fundamental test process. So first thing is to break down your testing project into different phases. As we have already discussed the fundamental test process initially, so you can first break down what are the phases in the testing cycle. For example, planning and control, analysis and design, implementation and execution, and evaluating exit criteria and reporting, and test closure activity. So usually all the testing activities, all the testing cycle has these phases. So first thing is to identify what phases are there in your testing cycle. Then identify what will be the activities within each phase. So for example, what will be the activities in the planning and control phase? What will be the activities in analysis and design phase? And then identify tasks and subtasks for those activities in these phases. So once you are done with identifying activities and tasks and subtasks, then you can estimate how long these tasks and subtasks will take to finish. So this is a flow for doing test estimation. This is the right way to do the test estimation in the test cycle. So let's understand some of the estimation techniques. For in ISTQB foundation level syllabus, there are two common techniques that you need to be aware of. The one is the consultative approach and the other is matrix based. So consultative approach is the estimation technique in which you take inputs from people who will do the tasks and the domain or technology experts. So you will take inputs from these people and estimate what time will be required to complete the tasks. Other is the matrix based, in which you analyze metrics from the past project and estimate your current project task based on the past metrics. So in the consultative approach, individual contributors and experts prepare the work breakdown structure for the project. So individual contributors, for example, technology experts, business experts and testers, they prepare a work breakdown structure for the project. So the work breakdown structure is being prepared. Then after that, team works together to understand effort, duration, dependencies and resource requirements. So once the work breakdown structure is prepared, all the tasks and subtasks have been prepared, then the team works together to understand effort, duration, dependencies and resource requirement. Then this is a bottom-up approach, because you start with the lowest level of work breakdown structure. So for example, you have work breakdown structure, task and subtask. So you start estimating those the effort required for that task and subtask, and then you add up to the higher level. So it's a bottom-up approach. So whatever effort is required to complete the tasks in the work breakdown structure that is added up at the till the top level to get a fair bit of idea of complete testing effort that will be required. So this is mostly followed previous metrics because previous metrics about the project are not available. So if the previous metrics about the project are not available, then you follow consultative approach. And disadvantages of this approach is that you have to rely on estimation done by the task owner or the technology expert or business expert. So you have to rely whatever they say that this task will take this much amount of time. So you have to rely on their estimation. That's the disadvantage of consultative approach. Then what is the metrics based approach? So in this approach, metric from similar previous projects are used for estimation. So the metrics from previous projects are already collected. If phase 1 of project has ended, you have the metrics from phase 1. You use those metrics to estimate phase 2 of the project. So the simplest approach for this approach is to take developer and tester ratio. Okay, so for example, in your previous phase you had a similar level of functionality being added. In the previous phase as well, you had a ratio of 3:2, so you can have same ratio in this phase as well, but this is the simplest approach and doesn't give you a proper estimation. So more reliable approach for metrics based approach is to classify the project in terms of size, complexity, and then compare how long similar project took in the past. So this is more reliable. What size of project was previous one, what time it took, how complex the functionalities were in the previous project, and then you can compare same thing with the current project and estimate that. Then average time required to execute one test case in past and estimating the total effort. So this is another approach in matrix based approach. For example, average time to execute one test case in previous test cycle was 1 hour. Then you estimate the same using that estimate for one test case. You can estimate the total effort in this phase as well. So that's another matrix based approach. So other sophisticated approaches can also be applied in matrix based approach. So for example, you can build a mathematical model to compare key parameters from past project and then estimate the effort for current tasks. So for example, how many test cases were documented in previous similar projects? What time it took to execute 100 test cases in previous project? So similarly, you build the model based on the complexity of the test cases, how much time it took, how many defects were raised per 100 test cases, how much time was required to fix those defects and retest them. So all this information can be entered into mathematical models, and which will in turn estimate the effort required for the current task. But this requires to build a mathematical model wherein you can feed the previous matrix data and get the current estimate. So what are the factors that affect the test effort? First factor is the product. So for example, if you do not have sufficient product documentation, you will require more time for understanding the product and doing the testing. So that's one factor that affects the test effort. You will require more effort if you have less documentation and bad documentation. And if the project is more complex, complexity of the project. If project is more complex, test effort will be more. If the project size is more big or it's huge, then the test effort for that project will be more. If the project is just a simple web application or a website, then the test effort for that will be very less. So depending on the product that is available, the complexity, size, and the documentation, that affects the test effort. Then the process. So what is the availability of test tools that will be used in the testing? That's first factor that can affect test effort. If the tools are available, once you start the testing, it will take less effort. If tools are not available, everything has to be done manually, then the test effort will be more. Then availability of test and development environment. If there are development and test environment already ready and up to date, will require less test effort, rather than you have to prepare development environment and test environment before starting the testing, which will require more time to set up test and dev environment before starting testing. Then what is the maturity in the organization? If the process maturity in organization is high, then the test effort required will be less, because the processes are already mature and you have to follow the specific processes to get the testing done. Then what are the people factors? For example, what are the team skills available? If there is no automation skill available in the team and you want to do automation, it will require more test effort. It will require more effort because team has to do training and learn about automation tool before they can go ahead and start working. If your team already has good automation skills, they can just go ahead and start with automation, and it will require less test effort because you save time of training and ramping up with the automation skills. And other factors might be the relationship within the team. Then what are the time factors? So time factors also affect the test effort. Then the test results. So defects found during test execution. If there are many defects found during test execution, it will extend the test effort. It will extend the test cycle. Defects failing retesting. Many defects found, developers are fixing them and they are failing retest. In that case, it will again affect the test effort. More effort will be required to retest those defects. Then any rework required due to changing requirements. In case the rework is required due to any changes in the requirement, for example, the requirements were not clear or incorrect, then if there is any rework involved in the development team, then that needs to be tested, and which in case will affect the test effort, and more testing will be required to test those changed requirements.